be political hell to pay. The Republicans will jump all over you and say that you don't want to win the war in Afghanistan. And if, God forbid, we should be perceived as losing in any way, shape, or form in Afghanistan, everybody will come back and say, oh, you see that? Obama didn't listen to his generals. He didn't listen to General McChrystal in Afghanistan. So, of course, we lost because of the weak liberals who decided to not do enough in Afghanistan. Now, you see why it's so political? And now General McChrystal says, oh, wasn't me. Wasn't me. I didn't leak the report. Golly gee willikers, if I get my hands on the son of a gun that leaked that report. Yeah, my ass. Now, why do I say my ass? One, it entirely suits his purposes. But two, he then went to London before this Denmark meeting, right? A couple hours before. Did a pre-organized trip, obviously, to give a speech on how if we withdraw from Afghanistan, it's going to be complete failure. If we don't have more troops, it's going to be complete failure, etc. I mean, really hard-hitting stuff, basically threatening Obama, you better do what I tell you, otherwise we're going to blame you for this whole mess. Even though we've been in Afghanistan for 8 years now, even though George Bush did not a goddamn thing for 7 years in Afghanistan. Now, all of a sudden, of course, politics being turned around to blame it on Obama, as we told you they would, right? So now what's Obama going to do? Well, today they put out a statement saying we will not have a complete withdrawal from Afghanistan. That is not on the table. That is not one of the options. But no one really thought that was one of the options, to be honest with you. It's more of a question of, are you going to double down, basically, put in 40,000 more troops or somewhere in that vicinity, and go and try to fight a counterinsurgency against the Taliban in Afghanistan and try to win the hearts and minds of the local population and leave them with a functioning, stable, and somewhat democratic government. Now, that's a tall order. Now, if you'd been doing that from the beginning, maybe you might have been able to do it in 8 years. If you think you could do it over the next 6 months, or even the next year or 18 months, you're kidding yourself. That's something that takes a long amount of time. Now, I might be in favor of that, but we got to have a serious discussion about this because we don't really have an effective partner in the Afghan government. It looks like the elections had a significant amount of fraud, to say the least, and the Karzai government is deeply corrupt. So how do you work with a government that the people, that the locals don't trust? How do you win the hearts and minds of the locals when they don't trust the government you're working with? So those are really hefty issues that the president has to deal with. Those are political issues. Those are overall strategy issues, not tactic issues, okay? And that is something that the general is not equipped, a decision general is not equipped to make. Is he going to make decisions on tactics? Of course. On how we carry out a military strategy? Of course. But whether we're in the right war or the wrong war, that's a decision for the president. Now, what they're trying to do is take that decision away from him. Now, so far, he's been on the side of the generals and the people who want to continue in Afghanistan, but he's at a critical juncture here because of what happened in the elections and because of the new request for even more troops. Now, the other strategy, on the other side of this coin, is represented by Vice President Joe Biden. Biden says, hey, listen, our job there is to fight al-Qaeda. We can't save Afghanistan. How many empires have crashed on the rocks of Afghanistan for us not to get this idea? So instead of trying to save the whole country, which is going to take years and billions, maybe trillions of dollars to do, and hundreds, if not thousands of American lives to do, let's do what we were supposed to do. Go get al-Qaeda. And that should be our primary objective. I think those are, again, two sides that if I was the president, I'd listen to both sides very, very carefully. And I'm not sure, given the new situation, new conditions, which side I come out on, okay? But the generals are definitely trying to undercut Biden, saying that's an unacceptable option and putting Obama in a hard spot. So Obama has this secret conversation with McChrystal that was, they're both shepherded into Denmark. Now, did they, give McChrystal a, I hate this phrase, tongue lashing? Sounds so wrong. But anyway, did they give him a tongue lashing? I don't know. Now I'm hoping no. But my guess is yes. I mean, they said, look, what are you doing here? What are you trying to subvert the power of the president? What's with this leak? What's with these speeches? This is absolutely unacceptable. Now, you ready for another interesting twist in this story? Okay, here's where it gets really interesting. One of the possibilities, and this idea was put out in an article in the New York Times, okay, is that David Petraeus might run in 2012. Okay, now he was Bush's quote favorite general, and during the Bush administration, he was a star. You know, gave media appearances, comes into Congress, and more importantly, much more importantly, honestly, is that when they were doing strategy, since Bush was a moron and didn't really know what to think, Petraeus would run the whole thing. They'd have hour-long meetings, and the first 20 minutes would be a Petraeus proposal, and then the rest of the time was spent discussing how they're going to implement Petraeus' proposal, right? And Bush didn't really have anything to say. Now we have a president who is making decisions for himself, and he has a lot of smart advisors who give him ideas on different sides. So Petraeus' power is diminished. Now remember, Petraeus now running the whole war theater, including Afghanistan and Iraq, right? There's Odierno in Iraq and McChrystal in Afghanistan, but Petraeus is on top of both those guys. Now, who was the main guy behind McChrystal and getting him in charge of Afghanistan? You guessed it, General David Petraeus. So Petraeus puts him into place. Meanwhile, he is very quiet himself, is not talking to the media at all, which he did a lot under the Bush administration. And now people in the White House, according to the New York Times, are beginning to get concerned. Is this guy getting ready to enter the 2012 elections? Now, of course, his staffers say, oh, no. The general's been very clear on the record that he has no interest in politics. You'd really have to twist his arm to get him to do that. Okay, maybe so, maybe not, right? And those denials could be true, or they could be total horse crap, meant to deflect attention from what's actually happening. Now, if Petraeus were going to run in 2012, the leak of the McChrystal report would be perfect for him. Because if Obama then decides, hey, you know what, we've already lost too many people in Afghanistan, we don't have a real partner to work with there, it's not going to work, I'm not going to put in the additional troops, then they turn around and blame Afghanistan on him. Of course, if anything goes wrong in Iraq, they'll blame that on him too. And then Petraeus walks in and goes, well, you know what, okay, you twisted my arm. What am I going to do? Okay, you win. Because my country needs me, I'll run for president and handle these wars like they should be. And it's not, look, I'll tell you, one, politically it's not a bad strategy. Number two, the Republicans have no credible leader. I mean, they're a bunch, it's a circus over there. They got a couple of ringmasters and a couple of clowns. They've stuffed them into a little car and they're driving around. But they don't have a clear authoritative leader, and you know they love authoritative leaders, and one that has credibility. And Petraeus could have a lot of those factors, so it is not an unthinkable option. Now, if the White House is worried that their top general, in effect, might run against them in the next elections, oh, then we got a real situation on our hands. Because, you know, look, honestly, that affects the White House's decisions too. And that's not a good thing. And I hope that they don't take that into account and they make decisions based on the realities in Afghanistan and Iraq and not on political considerations. Because here's one way that they could make a decision. Well, all right, they did a good job with the politics. We'll give them the 40,000 additional troops because if we don't, Petraeus might run against us. So we eliminate Petraeus as a possible opponent if we just escalate Afghanistan. If that's how you're going to make a political decision and people's lives are going to be lost based on that decision, that's terrible and disastrous. So I hope the White House does not go in that direction, not in terms of what policy decision they make, but in terms of why they make that decision, okay? Now, what might be even worse is if the generals in the field are playing politics, trying to undermine their own president while fighting these wars. That's even more disastrous. So there's a lot at play here. We got to see, continue to see where McChrystal comes out on this, where Petraeus comes out, what they leak, what they don't leak, what their strategy appears to be. But there is a lot of troubling signs here. What they did to Obama on this report was a horrible way to go. And I don't say that because it affects Obama. I mean for our country to be playing politics with wars like this, especially when the generals are involved. is terrible precedent. So we'll see what decision Obama makes. It's a tough, tough decision any way you slice it. It's tough policy-wise, and apparently now it's tough from a political perspective. And we'll follow it for you. And of course, the minute he makes a decision on the additional troops, we'll let you know. All right, let's take a quick break here and come right back. Young Turks. All right, and back to our show. All right, now I want to talk to you in this segment about the power of framing, the power of the question. You know, I talk about this on the show a lot. It's not the answer you get necessarily as much as it is the question. So if you pick your words carefully, and sometimes even if those words seem not to be altogether that discreet, you might be able to change the conversation in a positive direction. Now, that's what Alan Grayson has done with his attacks against the Republicans on health care. And that's what Michael Moore has done to some degree with his movie Capitalism. I want to discuss both of those and then move on to other areas where this applies as well. Let's start with Alan Grayson. He began by saying the Republicans want you to die quickly, and their main health care policy is don't get sick. And people were outraged by this, and it shifted the conversation. And the conversation went from, is Obama's proposal wrong or is the Democratic proposal wrong? Is it socialist, fascist, Marxist, et cetera, whatever the conservatives wanted to talk about, to are the Republicans really that evil? And honestly, if you're a Democrat, or in this particular case, if you care about the issues and you care about really effective health care reform, that's actually a very positive discussion. That's a discussion you want to have. Because right now, the main problem isn't any Democratic proposals. The main problem is the current system we have, which is terrible and killing people. And so Grayson changed the conversation. So now let's watch Grayson with David Schuster on MSNBC about reaction to his comments, and you get a sense of, again, listen in as you're watching, as to what is the conversation about and how has this shifted. Let's watch clip number 1.
Congressman, first of all, your reaction to the Republicans who want some sort of admonishment or formal censure of what you said.
It's just another Republican hissy fit. Can't they talk about the issues? America so badly needs health care reform. Do they have to make the issue about me? It's been 72 hours since I gave that speech, and so far we've heard nothing from the Republicans explaining what they plan to do to keep Americans alive.
There was a Republican in Florida who was on our air yesterday who complained not specifically about the statistics you cited, but about your use of the word Holocaust. Watch. Here's Adam Hasner.
To compare America's healthcare system to the systematic murdering of 6 million Jews and millions of others, it is outrageous, and Congressman Grayson should go back to the floor and apologize for those offensive remarks.
Congressman, your reaction to that, was it a poor choice of words?
I think that I could have used different words. I could have, for instance, said that this was the disaster for America. I could have said that the fact that 1 million people have lost their lives since I was born unnecessarily simply because they didn't have health insurance in America is a tragedy. But listen, the words are not important. The lives are what's important. That's what matters here. Can't we talk about that, or do we have to continue to see the Republicans manufacture indignation in lieu of policy? I think at this point we see the emperor has no clothes. It's been 72 hours since I said what I said. They've got nothing. And America deserves more. They deserve better than nothing. They deserve a solution to their problems, whether it's health care, whether it's energy, whether it's jobs, whether it's the economy. We have to move ahead. And I've said to the Republicans over and over again, you can lead, you can follow, or you can get out of the way.
You go get them. Now, look, at the end of this conversation, some might walk away thinking, you know what, Grayson was wrong in his choice of words. But they'll also walk away thinking, he appears to be right on the substance. The Republicans really haven't proposed anything, and all those people did die without health insurance. Good points, right? Now, throughout the summer, and especially in August, I should say, they did all those rallies, right? And then at the end, we had the 9/12 rally in Washington. We had those town hall events where they came and screamed and yelled about how Obama was a fascist and a Marxist and a Kenyan, etc. And at the end of that, you said, hey, you know what? Those people seem a little crazy, and I'm not sure I'm on their side. But what happened? Obama's numbers went down, and the health care reform package numbers went down, because at the end of the day, that's all people were discussing, whether this was too much of a government takeover of health care. Now, the reality is it's not, but was the result of that question. Instead, today, we're discussing the question that Grayson brought up, which is, do the Republicans want people to die? That's a great question. And once you start discussing that question, well, they want them to die a little bit or not so much. Okay, then we get to the point, go, wait a minute, why don't we change this system? Why do we have a system that has all of these people dying without health insurance and because they didn't have health insurance? That's the conversation you want to have. Now, and I like that little line he said there towards the end when he said, look, words are not nearly as important as the lives. The lives are what's important. And I think that's the takeaway here. So now Grayson's going to continue, and he's going to talk about how the GOP was sharing the Olympic loss. This is just more a matter of taking a couple more shots at the Republicans. I enjoyed it. Clip number 2.
So we hear a number of Republicans almost celebrating the fact that the International Olympic Committee decided not to give it to Chicago and celebrating that the president was humiliated, according to Republicans. You were described Republicans the other night as Neanderthals. Does that also apply to your view of how they're handling this story?
Well, sure. I mean, they've said now for months that they're willing to see Obama fail, even if it means America fails. And this is a perfect example of that. America lost its bid for the Olympics, and the Republicans are celebrating. Isn't that great? Someone should remind them which team they're really on.
Let me see if I got, don't I have something for this? I don't want to use the things. No, can't find it. Oh, there it is. I mean, this is Grayson whenever he's on TV. Did you say Republicans? All right. Anyway, that was nice work by Grayson. Enjoyed that. Now, back to the larger theme of framing. So Michael Moore comes out with a movie, Capitalism, and love story. Of course, he's kidding. And talks about how capitalism is evil and that the major religions are actually against capitalism. And he has a number of Catholic priests on there to say, oh, yeah, capitalism is not what is biblically correct. In the Bible it says rich man cannot get into heaven, eye of the needle, et cetera, et cetera. Most people know that phrase. Well, they know it for now. Wait till the conservatives do their new Bible. That leaves out all the liberal passages. It's true. It's true. That's coming in a little bit. He starts this conversation about, hey, wait a minute now. Is it really religious to be right-wing or to be in favor of unfettered capitalism with no regulations or concern about the community? And that's another important conversation to have. Now, Fox News has to counter, right? They can't just let that stand. So they bring in their show lackey priest. Now, why do I say that? This guy's going to argue that Moore is wrong about the Bible, and I'm sure that there's very legitimate priests in the country and many other people who are religious in the country who disagree with Moore and have a fine point. And, if you want to get into a Bible quoting contest, you can find equal and opposite quotes in the Bible for just about anything, right? But you can tell this guy's a show because it looks like he's reciting Republican platforms, right? It's not like, hey, wait a minute, that's a little unfair. Look at the Bible. Let's look at these sections. No, he just doesn't like Michael Moore, and he's a Republican, and he wants unfettered markets. It's obvious. All right, look, don't take my word for it. Let's go to the clip. Clip number 7 here on Fox News Channel.
Meanwhile, filmmaker Michael Moore, no stranger, of course, to controversy, has just released his latest movie. It's titled Capitalism, A Love Story. It's not the subject matter, but the religious suggestions that have some in the Christian community crying foul this morning.
That's right. Here to explain is Fox News religion contributor, Father Jonathan Morris. Good morning to you,
This guy's like 13.
Someone came out to church last week and told me there's this great Christian movie out there by Michael Moore. Honest to God.
Really? So, well, because in this movie now, which is very critical of capitalism, there are some Catholic priests in this movie. The implication there being that the church is universally against capitalism. Not exactly the case, you'd say.
What he's suggesting is that there is a more Christian way than capitalism. It's kind of early to talk about Michael Moore, so let's make it very simple. Who traditionally, historically, has been in the corner of Michael Moore against capitalism? We look at Marx, we look at Stalin, we look at Hitler.
Oh, come on.
In present day, we've got Chavez, we've got Castro. Has this been good for people? Has this been a better way? I would say capitalism, as such, is an opportunity, when properly used and, yes, regulated at some point, that helps people become more humane, to self-determine, to acquire personal property. That's all good, that's all Christian, that's all human.
But he seems to suggest that socialism is actually more Christian because it spreads the wealth.
Who's spreading the wealth?
It makes more of a level playing field, is his sort of principle.
What happens is government is the one who's deciding who they're going to spread the wealth to. He also says capitalism has done nothing for me. He's a millionaire. I haven't gone to see the movie because he hasn't made it free for me. And why not?
And he's in fact said that capitalism has never helped him. He actually has a bit of a background in the Catholic Church, though, to some extent,
He says,
right?
and this is, I believe, a big part of the marketing of this film.
Okay.
Notice he's using marketing for this film, which is a very capitalistic approach to things, right? Suggesting that he has thought about being a priest, or other people saying this about him, that this is the Christian way. It's the same thing that we're seeing the administration doing right now in proposing a lot of the healthcare stuff. The moral thing to do is this.
Right.
I think Michael Moore here has been disingenuous, but that's just me. I'm sorry for getting so excited so early in the morning.
It's great to hear the other side, because so many other networks have been rhapsodic about this movie, saying it's such a Christian, a deeply religious film. So thank you for shedding light on the other side.
Yeah, Fox News wanted to cover the other side. I didn't see that coming. Now, did you hear any reference to the Bible from that clergy? I didn't hear one. He attacked Michael Moore, saying, "Oh yeah, and if he doesn't like capitalism, why is he making money off this movie? What does that have to do with the Bible or religion?" That's not addressing the main point at all. He attacked the government spreading the wealth. This clergy did. Again, that's a very Republican platform and a talking point, but what was your reference to the Bible, right? And of course he said Michael Moore has friends like Stalin and Hitler. What does Hitler have to do with Moore's position? Nothing. Hitler's on the opposite side. If anything, he's on your side, okay? So please, spare me. I'm not saying you're the same as Hitler. That's what you're doing. You're saying Hitler and Moore are the same. But he's definitely not on the left side of the spectrum, okay, no matter how much you guys want to try to redefine history. And then, you know, he attacks government, as I said before, and so this guy's a shill. Not one reference to the Bible. Just, oh, Moore, I hate Moore. He's like Stalin and Hitler. Yeah, good for you. But now, so what's the positive side of this? Look, all of a sudden, even on Fox News Channel, we're having a conversation about whether capitalism is against the Bible, okay? And whether the right-wing ideology of never regulating the markets and letting the rich get richer and richer and richer is the right way to go. And if it's the Christian way to go. That's an important conversation. And if you notice, the one little thing he threw in there was, he said, well, maybe we can regulate a little bit. Oh, you look at that. Wow, a concession of some sort, at least on Fox News Channel. Look, that's the conversation we want to have, man, and get people thinking, hey, wait a minute, it does say those things in the Bible. It does say that, you know, the rich should not, should give to the poor, and that we should help the neediest and the sickest and the poorest among us all. And they can't deny that. So an excellent job of Michael Moore, even if you don't agree with him, and I don't agree with him on a central thesis on capitalism, of changing the conversation about what it means to be Christian. And again, I'm not Christian, so it's not like I think, oh, we should follow the Bible. But for all those people who say we should follow the Bible, then maybe you should read it instead of trusting fake clergy on Fox News Channel. All right. Now, I wanted to do one more thing on the changing of the conversation. You know, a guy who's been on the warpath is Dylan Ratigan on MSNBC. Now, he's going to take on this corporatist culture. I've talked about it. He's written about it before as well. We came out with articles, I think maybe on the same exact day on this same topic. So apparently we're on the same wavelength. And he's, you know, going after these guys more and more. And he's one of the few guys in the mainstream media right now where they discuss the real motivations of the politicians and how they're getting paid off by the lobbyists. Now, we put a spotlight on it because it happens so infrequently. And to the point now when I see Ratigan's show on this, and I've seen now a number of times that he's done the same thing, I think he might be even handling it better than the print journalists, because every print journalist article I see talks about how the senators want this or that because they're conservative or they're moderate or they're centrist, but they don't mention the lobbyists at all as to what their motivations would be. And those are terrible articles because they're leaving out the real motivations of the politicians. Well, Radigan handles that. Now, as you watch this video, look at what he calls what I call him corporatists. Look at what he calls them. It's much harsher. It's interesting. Let's go to clip number 9 here.
Helping us identify corporate communism in our country that is a cancer on our nation. The folks at the Sunlight Foundation, Jake Brewer. A little sunlight's a very powerful thing for those who like to use money to steal from us. Sheila Krumholtz, Executive Director for the Center for Responsive Politics, and its website, opensecrets.org, which is where we're able to find out who is getting bought off by who. And then you can see here, of course, Jonathan and Karen. Jake, I will begin with you. Walk us through how it is that the lobbyists are controlling this process.
Well, the thing with the lobbyists is that they're not able, we're not able to track the real influence that they're having, or at least we weren't until last week. And what we were able to find is that they're actually coming together to form these clusters of influence. And so, along with Sheila and her team at the Center for Responsive Politics, we're able to find that lobbyists are coming together in large numbers and giving large sums of money that is actually having much, much more influence than we were originally able to track. And again, we're running up into a case where we have a 19th century government process, or practically so, coming up to a 21st century citizenry that demands this type of accountability and transparency, and we're now able to track that through new investigation that we've been able to uncover. So,
yeah, Sheila, how does this work? In other words, if I understand correctly, lobbyists are actually giving their own money, and then if I'm a lobbying firm that has a lot of lobbyists, I just go to Karen and all the other lobbyists that I work with and say, everybody give as a syndicate to Max Baucus to make sure that the corporate communists don't have to compete while everybody else in this country does have to compete. For example, again, preventing competition so that our healthcare companies can continue to take money without actually having any real competition.
Well, it's interesting. This research, I think, puts a fine point on the connections, how the lobbyist contributions really echo and complement those of their clients. It isn't a smoking gun, however. I should say that there is no proof of coordination just by the fact that there are all of these contributions coming from and really representing the same sources. We don't know if it was raised through a fundraiser or if it was raised by the client or by the lobbyist. We don't know the direction and the motivation necessarily, but we can say that these lobbyists who are marching up to Capitol Hill to lobby on behalf of their clients have a big dollar sign on their back. They represent so much money from themselves, their colleagues, their family members, and their clients.
Well, politically speaking, though, Dylan, too, I mean, you have to ask yourself, you look at the composition of the committees, you look at the dollar donations that they're getting. This is how business is done in Washington. This is how political compromise gets made in Washington. Maybe we'll get a little bit of change, but not so much change. And that's sort of what we're seeing, I think, with Wyden.
Jake, the more I learn and see this, the more I suspect we don't have a two-party system, but we have a one-party system where it's those who have the money to control Democrats and Republicans to ensure they don't have to compete, they get tax loopholes, et cetera, and then everybody else that gets screwed. Is that basically how this country's set up right now?
Increasingly, that's the way it starts to look, doesn't it? I mean, I think the problem here, too, is that we're just simply not able to track who is having the real influence on this bill. At least we haven't been. And so there's a real onus now on Congress to release more information about who is having that influence on them. And so that when it comes time for us as a citizenry who sent them to Washington to really represent us around these truly vital and important issues to this country, that we're able to track who is, in fact, influencing them. That's what it's really about, money and influence, and we're now for the first time starting to see who is actually having that with numbers and dollar signs through this new work.
Man, you know, I don't know where Dylan Radigan comes from on the political spectrum. I literally don't. I don't know if he's from the right or if he's the left. I don't know if he's a former Republican or a Democrat, or if he was a former Republican or a former Democrat. I have no idea. I know he used to be on CNBC. And, you know, he parted ways with them, and now I'm glad he did, because this is the kind of stuff they would never allow on CNBC. Even though they're, of course, you know, under the same umbrella of MSNBC, they do different programming over there. And challenging the corporations and calling them corporate communists, that's not going to fly at CNBC. But he's entirely right. I mean, that's harsh language, but I like that kind of language, because that is what they are. They're, as I've explained many times, and I got a blog up on it today on our website, on theyoungturks.com. I even did a poll on it on AOL's Hot Seat. They're corporatists, and they're opposite of capitalists, because capitalists want free markets, and they want choice for the consumer, and they want competition. These corporations, yes, they're a byproduct of capitalism, an offspring of capitalism, if you will, but once they're born, they have the Oedipus complex. They want to kill capitalism. They don't want you to have choices. They don't want there to be real competition. They want to snuff out the competition. Now, that's normal. I get how that works. The problem is when these corporatists, or as Radigan calls them, the corporate communists, capture the government. And then they use the government to kill off their competition. So, and that's the situation we have now, where they funnel in a lot of money through these lobbyists to buy politicians on both sides, on the Democratic side and on the Republican side. And so they set up a system where, you know, in fact, right now in the healthcare industry, there's very little competition. And if you try to offer up a public option as competition, they go ballistic. They've tried throwing every weapon they have in their arsenal to try to kill the public option, because God forbid they should have competition. Now look, if you say, hey, you know what, the government shouldn't be in that business, other private companies should be giving them competition, I don't disagree with you there, okay? But that's not the situation we're in, because the government has already been captured. Now let me explain what I mean by that real quick. Look, on a state-by-state level basis, they only allow certain corporations in that sphere, okay? Now, if they opened up every state to every insurance company in the country, then you might have more healthy competition where premiums get lowered. And that's a proposal I'm definitely willing to listen to. That might be an interesting way of bringing down costs and introducing competition. But of course, the healthcare companies don't want that, and the politicians are helping them to avoid that. Now, in a situation where you don't have that kind of private competition, well, then we don't have a choice. Then we have to inject some sort of public competition. And look, but that public option is like another company in essence, so, because you have to pay premiums into it. It is not subsidized. It's not based on taxpayer money. So if it can't compete, it's just going to die off. It forces the other companies to compete more effectively. And if you weren't a corporate communist, you'd be in favor of it. If you were a capitalist, you'd be in favor of it. But these corporations have no such interest. They just want to limit their competition, and that's why Radigan calls them communists. And it's an interesting choice of words, but not a bad one. All right, Young Turks. All right, back on the Young Turks. Now it's time to talk about crazy conservatives a little bit. Let's get it warmed up. I'm going to start with Lindsey Graham. He made some comments about how the birthers are crazy and that Glenn Beck is a cynic and not the guy to watch. Then Beck went after him, and then Graham doubled down again on Fox News Sunday, saying that he doesn't watch the program, and nor does he have any interest in doing so about Glenn Beck's program. Now, so they've been in a little bit of fight. It might lead you to believe, oh, wow, you know, Lindsey Graham's a bit of a moderate. Interesting that he chose that tack. Now, I will say, and as I said at the time, he's not part of the lunatic wing of the party, and he's not going to go along with these conspiracy theories, and that's to his credit. But when you get to his actual substantive ideas, and they are substantive ideas, they're even more dangerous. Okay, now he's going to go on with Saxby Chambliss here and talk about how Iran needs to be attacked. Now, he starts in an ironic way, but I can't believe the things they're saying. Let's go to clip number 3, and then I'll break it down for you afterwards. Here it is.
I think an Israeli attack on Iran is a nightmare for the world because it will rally the Arab world around Iran, and they're not aligned now. It's too much pressure to put on Israel. Let's go down the sanction road, as my colleagues have indicated. Military action should be the last resort anyone looks at, and I would rather that our allies and us take military action if it's necessary. And let me say this, only if it's necessary, but if sanctions fail and Iran's going down the road to get a nuclear weapon, every Sunni Arab state that could would want a nuclear weapon. Israel will be more imperiled. The world will change dramatically for the worse. And if we use military action against Iran, we should not only go after their nuclear facilities, we should destroy their ability to make conventional war. They should have no planes that can fly and no ships that can float. If you go down that road, knock them out conventionally as well as their nuclear programs, but that would be your last resort. And I don't want Israel to have that burden. That's not the best way to do it.
But the Israelis say, what's the timetable? What's the timeline? How long should we wait?
Here's what act. first. See what actions have, what effect they'll have on Iran. The Iranian people very much are against this regime. Let's empower the Iranian people and isolate the regime. Let's do what my colleagues have said on this show. Have a series of votes in the United States Senate and the House in the next 2 weeks to give our president tools to impose meaningful sanctions on Iran. If they change their behavior, we can back off. But do all of this in the next few weeks. Do that before you even consider military action. But take military action before they get a weapon.
But the problem with military action also is that you're probably not going to be able to stop the production of uranium by just a simple airstrike. Lindsay's right. It's an all-or-nothing deal. And is it worth that at this point in time? When we know they have the capability, we can slow them down, but a full-out military strike is what it would take.
All right. I mean, he started out reasonably enough. Hey, you know, Israel attacking Iran's a nightmare, and the military option is the last option. I was like, all right, I was encouraged by it. How foolishly naive of me. And then he says, well, you know, of course, if we do attack, we should obliterate Iran in an all-out war, destroy every piece of military equipment they have, every ship, every plane, complete conventional warfare against Iran. I don't know if you or Lindsey Graham have any idea the level of commitment it would take from us to do that. I mean, if you thought the Iraq war was big and messy, wait till you get a hold of the war against Iran, where Lindsey Graham says we have to take out every single piece of conventional warfare weaponry that they have. That's nuts. So, and then he says, this is my favorite part, you know, I don't want Israel to have that burden. Oh, no, golly gee willikers, of course not. We should fight its wars for it. No, I don't want Israel to have any kind of burden. No, I want to give it $3 billion a year, now more. I want to give it, you know, all this weaponry, and then I want to fight its wars for it. No, come on, man. I mean, if they weren't so damn serious, and if they didn't have so many U.S. politicians on their side, you'd think it was a joke. What? First, yes, Israel shouldn't attack Iran. It's a terrible idea for Israel, let alone for the region, let alone for Iran. And if anybody has any degree of sense in Israel, and I suspect that a decent number of people in the Israeli government do, they would caution against that. It's a very, very bad idea. The only idea that's worse is, all right, Israel, I don't want to burden you. Can we just go ahead and fight this disastrous war against Iran ourselves and have American soldiers die for it? Okay, thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Get out of here, man. That is not an option. That's crazy talk. It's like, you know, with Republicans, you can't, I don't know if like their crazy conspiracy theories are worse or if their actual substantive ideas are worse. Unbelievable. Now, you want to talk about crazy ideas? Yeah, I got time for it. I'm going to do it. The conservatives are going to redo the Bible. Not all conservatives, but there's a group, and it's on Conservapedia, that clown-ass website we've quoted in the past. And they've put together a project where they're going to weed out all the liberal passages in the Bible. First of all, good luck to you. It's going to take you decades. Okay, if you read the Bible, you have to take out all the things about helping the poor, helping the needy, helping the sick, etc., etc. You got to almost obliterate the New Testament. I don't know if anything's going to be left. They want to redefine some words like word. Okay, I don't know why they want to do that. Like miracle. I don't know how they're going to redefine miracle, but here's my favorite one. They want to redefine the word peace, probably so that it means war. And they say the whole point of this is to take away the framework, and I'm quoting here, again, of liberal bias in the Bible. I mean, come on, man. I mean, you know how Stephen Colbert said reality has a well-known liberal bias? Conservatives are now against the Bible because it has a well-known liberal bias. And, one other thing they're going to get rid of from the Bible, the word government. Just pretend it doesn't exist. Pretend that it is, you know, not in the Bible. I don't know if they're just going to erase all the passage or just the word government, or maybe replace the word government with some other word that they like. Now, they asked a conservative columnist at BeliefNet about this, and he described the effort as, quote, just crazy, like what you'd get if you crossed Jesus' seminar with the college Republican chapter at a rural institution of Bible learning. He said, no, anybody with half a sense knows that editing the Bible for your own political purposes, I mean, how can you pretend to believe in the Bible and then do that? I mean, isn't it basically a surrender by these conservatives saying, no, the Bible's not on our side. We can't win with this document, so we're going to make a new Bible, a conservative Bible, that doesn't say what the real Bible says. I mean, if you're a Christian, that is a big sign to you. They are not on your side. They're now they're literally trying to twist the Bible, because as if they didn't do it enough politically, but through the actual words in the text, they're trying to twist it so that it suits their political purposes perfectly, because it doesn't do a good enough job on its own. You know why they're doing this, by the way? The problem is people started reading the Bible. They were like, oh, wait a minute. Oh, you're right. It does say to help the poor. How does that help conservative causes? Why would I be a Republican and be in favor of, or why would I be a Christian and be a Republican? Like, let's get an editor in here. Editor, pronto, let's go. Fix this thing up. All right, if you're on that side, have at it, Hoss. Young Turks.